Welcome back everyone, and it's time to go balls deep! My Hero Academia Season 5 has decided to rejumble the events of the manga.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean the best arc that kickstarts the greatness that the manga has been delayed. My Villain Academia. But in its place, we get Aizawa's backstory and the whole reason why he became a vibe. With the times and all, I'm pretty sure we can relate with this dude. I for sure can. Like, look at his eye bags, look at mine. It's a no-brainer. This dude is an entire vibe and I love him. He is one of the best characters in the entire show. But you must be wondering how he became gloomy and who he is, right? It's been 5 seasons and you still don't know. To go completely balls deep into the story of Aizawa, first we have to rewind the clock a bit. Way back to his school days. From the My Hero Vigilante manga, Aizawa's backstory begins in the My Hero Academia Vigilante chapter 59, where he speaks to the protagonist in this spin-off manga regarding emotions being involved in high-stakes situations where it could be risky and it shouldn't sway your decision making in battle. Chapter 59 begins with teen Aizawa self-reflecting regarding his situation, where he understands that he isn't like All Might, he's just an ordinary person who only has so much power to make a difference. Which, remember guys, is a reoccurring theme in My Hero Academia, where every hero and character eventually has to realize what they must do with their power and the difference that they can make with the responsibility it holds within society. This history and theme repeats itself with the next generation that Aizawa eventually taught. If you had the notification bell on for our channel, we cover the recent chapters in a very detailed manner, where you would know that Deku started emulating Bakugo's early character development in the story, where he started to believe that power is what is required to defeat All for One, rather than uniting with his friends, since they can't keep up with the overwhelming strength of their enemies. However, after Bakugo's apology for bullying Deku and Class 1A reaching out to him, he has realized what Aizawa did in his childhood in the Vigilante manga that we come to know, that support is required and the burdens between friends should be shared to overcome the hurdles life throws at them. So let's begin with Aizawa as a teen. Well, he felt like he was never himself. He couldn't even save a single cat on a mission, which is why he can't look at one in the present day, since it reminds him of the loss of his best friend. Ever since he was a child, Aizawa always saw himself in this skewed perception, but it was his best friend during his younger years that helped him resolve these inner doubts. He was an attendee at UA just like Deku, where he became close friends with Hizashi Yamada, aka Present Mike, and this other dude named Oboro Shirakumo, aka Kurogiri. Yes, that's right, the Kurogiri from the League of Villains. But for me to explain how is that possible, you must stick around to the end of this video. So let's take a look at where his story began. Back in UA with his 2 best friends, who were referred to as the 3 dumbigos of Class 8. You know, it's a pun on the words. They were dumbigos. Yeah, you guys get it.
Wait a minute guys. Before we do start, I must inform you that this video was made possible by Honkai Impact 3rd, an amazing fast-paced gacha style RPG created by MiHoYo. You play as badass anime female warriors known as Valkyries, and I'm pretty sure some of them would end up as your perfect waifus. Unlike a lot of mobile games which are puzzles or resource based, Honkai is a straight up beat 'em up RPG, so there are characters to level up, weapons to upgrade, item drops to obtain, and the overall playing experience is amazing. If you want to spice things up, there are many different game modes, from the main stories to extra stories, and not to forget the all new Elysian Realm. The game also has a lot of support from the developers MiHoYo, where they would actually set up unique events in the game to keep things interesting. In fact, they have just released the new version 5.0 summer update, where you guys can get your hands on the new S-rank battlesuit, Hersher of Flameshin. With this, Kiana can go full on aerial mode, unleashing sword blast and even evade mid-air. Oh, and not to mention, this new update also brings in the new summer themed wardrobe option for your Valkyries. Now, I'm certain you guys will enjoy it, but But don't just take our word for it. The game already has 1 million downloads and it close to 5-star ratings. Honkai Impact Third is available on both Android and iOS. If you download the game right now, you can redeem the gift code for 30 crystals, 2,888 asteroids, and a Herrscher trial card. If you do like animes and games like us, then make sure to give it a go. The link is in the comment section and description below, along with an awesome anime cinematics of the game.
Anyway, in fact, the hero named Eraserhead is actually down to Hizashi, as he was the one who chose the name for Aizawa. During his time in school, Aizawa began having doubts over his ability to become a hero, thinking so low of himself that he couldn't even save a single kitten which was abandoned on the side of the road. All he could bring himself to do was leave his umbrella for the kitten to keep it dry from the rain, and then continue on his walk to school. It wasn't until he went to class that very same day that his attitude will begin to change. Soaking wet from the rain with his iconic gloomy looking face, in fact Aizawa's depression and gloom attitude was so apparent that Present Mike knew the exact words Aizawa would state in response to him trying to cheer him up. But I mean, just look at this panel, look at it, look what he's saying to his friend Aizawa. How can you blame him, right? I totally relate with this dude. He's such a vibe. It's like someone telling you in real life, why are you sad? When you tell someone you have depression, right, and they say, just be happy. What do you mean you're sad? They're like, oh my god, you solved all my problems. I didn't know I just have to be happy. I didn't know you solved all my problems. I didn't know you could.
Can you speak English?
Fuck you!
Shit, cheers mate, cheers. Moving on, Aizawa was caught by surprise when his friend Oboro suddenly appeared, flying on a cloud, which was his quirk. Oboro had Aizawa's umbrella which he returned back to him, and then the kitten from before. This act from his friend caused Aizawa's mentality to change little by little during the summer of his second year as he started to rub off on him. Wait, that sounds weird. But basically, I mean, when someone is so good and inspirational that they can rub off on you better than other people for your betterment. Wait, that sounds worse.
Oh! Ew! What the fuck?
In chapter 60 of My Hero Academia Vigilante, Aizawa was always trying his hardest, achieving above average grades in both practical exercises and academic subjects. However, he never had a clear vision for the future, which held him back from finding an agency to accept him as an apprentice. His lack of faith in himself was only made worse during a joint session between Class 2A and Class 2B, in which all the students had an amazing time and actually showed off their purpose and powers. Aizawa felt like an outcast. Even his friends did well. So Aizawa's teacher had a conundrum, since he knew he was trying his hardest in both practical and academic subjects. But Aizawa still didn't have a clear vision into what he wanted to become with his quirk, which again is something every one of us can definitely relate to. I myself didn't know I would become a YouTuber. In reality, I was pushed into computer science, but I didn't enjoy it at all. And on top of that, I failed my exams. Imagine being Asian and you failed your exams. Do you know how much beatings I went through? I thought I was unsuccessful just like Aizawa. But after realizing my best talents and what I'm suited to, things took a drastic turn in my life. So the lesson here is that the success you desire must be brought from within. If you don't believe in yourself, why would others? So never give up, guys. That's my message of the day. All the summer is here. And as a quick note, this is why Aizawa's role is so important to Shinto in Deku's generation of heroes, as both of them share similar issues and traits when it comes to their stories and who they want to be. Shinto lacks purpose and a role due to the uniqueness of his quirk, right? This is why Aizawa is pushing him to learn his unique fighting style to unlock his potential, just as others helped him in his backstory. Because of Aizawa's lack of motivation and purpose, he was caught in an altercation with Sensoji, a student from Class 2B. Sensoji pointed out that the so-called uselessness of such a crappy quirk, saying, "What's the point? When you just lose in a fist fight anyway, what can you do with your eraser quirk?" He points out Aizawa's insecurities regarding his parlor tricks, and this does get to him since his only comeback was, "There's nothing I can do about my quirk anyway." Subsequently, Aizawa opened up to his friends about his personal doubts on the UA rooftop. His best friend Oboro tries to comfort him, suggesting that his quirk would be best suited for battling against villains since it will make the battlefield even. However, Aizawa knows he can't fight, but this is when when a young Midnight shows up who goes on to adopt the kitten as well and invites Oboro and Aizawa to train with her at the Purple Revolution Agency. Here he would train under his new boss, his Purple Highness. Now another fun fact is that Midnight's attire was so saucy, she's got that sauce, right, that within a year it actually had to create a new rule within Hero Society that the amount of skin and dress code they must have should be limited. And I don't see anything wrong with that. Like, look at this shit. Editors, make sure you censor this stuff. I don't even want to be demonetized. I don't even want to risk it, bruh. So during Aizawa's time at the agency, he and his best friend Oboro came across a villain whilst patrolling the area who was causing a robbery. Eraserhead and Loudcloud both engaged the villain, but it was revealed that the villain in question actually had a smokescreen quirk. Now of course Aizawa's quirk Eraser relies on his eyes, and so with the smokescreen Aizawa could no longer see, causing the villain to escape as his quirk could not take effect. Because of his actions, Aizawa was on the receiving end of a telling off by his new boss. Not because he let the villain escape however, but instead because he was being a hero with such a gloomy look on his face. He looks like he has depression, right? Remember guys, a hero is supposed to make those around them feel safe, no matter the situation, which is why All Might and later Deku are such perfect heroes. This is the message he is trying to get across to Aizawa, that a hero must strike confidence and not be gloomy. Again, connecting back to Deku's current situation where people perceive him as a villain and he is not happy at all while saving everyone. Deku did a complete 180 from always smiling whilst taking on his responsibilities to now being dripped out. He got the drip, don't get the wrong way, he got the drip, but he's angry with the drip. But moving back to Aizawa's past, he reflects upon these wise words, claiming it is impossible for him to smile as a hero if he doesn't do a good enough job. However, his friend Oboro reassures him that a smile is important even if you do screw up. In the event that they encounter this villain or any like him again, Oboro lends Aizawa his goggles, which is where his iconic look spawned from in the first place. These goggles aren't just some extravagant fashion statement, but are actually a vital part of his hero costume. That's because with them, his eyes are protected from any dust or debris which may restrict his vision, allowing his quirk to be accessible at all times, no matter his surroundings. This is why in the future, Aizawa is still wearing the very same goggles Oboro gave him, who is now Kurogiri, the villain that All For One created. Now in the Vigilante manga, the exact same villain just so happened to be spotted again whilst on patrol. Oboro and Aizawa engaged the villain, and with the help of his new goggles and purpose, Aizawa's eyes were unaffected by the smokescreen quirk, allowing the two of them to take the villain down as a duo. This came with the praise from both his boss, his Purple Highness, and also local bystanders who witnessed the battle. With this out the way, however, they returned to UA after the work studies ended, where Aizawa and Oboro were reunited with their friend Hizashi, still rocking those sick ass goggles which had now become a trademark look for the two of them working together as a duo. Now remember that stupid bully we mentioned earlier in the start of the video? Well, he picks a fight with Aizawa once again, saying he copied his hero costume and goggles. So he's basically saying, why you dripped out? I'm jealous, right? So he has this inferiority complex, which means he challenges Aizawa once again in training. But this time, our favorite sensei that has such an amazing vibe, I'm vibing with this dude, he ends up winning and getting his own back, because whilst training with Oboro by going on missions and finally understanding what type of hero he wants to be through him, he learns a new fighting style that goes hand in hand with his Erasure quirk. This fight was really important because whoever lost this fight had to remove the goggles forever from their hero costume, but you know, they're the MC, this our bitch, I'm the protagonist. You think you could bully me? And he gets owned. I will now pass the video on to Harrison as he will dive even deeper into the rest of Aizawa's backstory and how Kurogiri is his former best friend. In chapter 62, the three of them came up with the idea to start their own independent hero agency once they all graduate. One where Oboro and Hizashi could be in charge of the combat, with Aizawa playing the support role from a distance, erasing villains' quirks to allow the finishing blow to be dealt. However, even at this point, he questioned his worth, asking asking Oboro if this is just his way of telling Aizawa he isn't good enough. But after some reassurance from his friend, Aizawa began to stare into the sky, thinking about how fast life was moving and how much potential the future held. The following week, Aizawa, Oboro and Midnight continued their work studies under his Purple Highness, their sensei. Whilst on patrol, they meet a group of nursery school children. Oboro compliments Aizawa's work with children, calling him a natural and tells him how he should consider a future working in daycare or at a school. But Aizawa again denies this, saying how he has no attributes about him that any kids would like. But much to his surprise, he is proven wrong when one of the kids they were helping thanked Aizawa personally. Oboro tells him how he has to stop thinking so low of himself and that if he puts his mind to it, he could achieve anything. However, Aizawa still downplays the idea, saying he isn't good enough to go into the life of teaching, but he still considers his suggestion regardless. Now, as you can tell, this is obviously the reason Aizawa becomes a teacher in the future for UA, due to his childhood best friend pushing him into discovering himself and what he is good at. Unfortunately, after this conversation, disaster struck. Another villain was attacking the city, and this time it was a large, extremely powerful villain, one with the ability to absorb other quirks and fire them back at a stronger level. Yeah, like that is seriously broken. Why has this guy not just taken over the world by now? He's like a mini all-for-one. So during this battle, his Purple Highness's team engaged the villain. However, when they all simultaneously blast off their quirks, they are instantly swallowed up and converted into ammunition for the great villain creature named Garvey. Oboro and Aizawa take charge of evacuating nearby civilians in the meantime, but disaster strikes as Oboro, aka Loud Cloud, uses his quirk to save the group of small school children from falling debris, thus leaving himself open, ultimately resulting in rubble piling atop of him, leaving him unable to fight. Think about a Kakashi and Obito situation. The stories are quite similar, to be honest, and Kakashi and Aizawa do share the same vibe. Oh, you guys get it. So the destruction in fact was so great that Aizawa was the only hero left standing to take the destructive villain down. The odds were stacked against him and he began to run low on self-confidence once again. His mind scrambles around to try and think of a solution when suddenly, through Oboro's small speaker, Aizawa hears his voice. His best friend was still there, cheering him on and psyching him up to take the villain down, which subsequently gives Aizawa a second win and a spike in self-confidence, which allows him to face the villain one-on-one and fight for the future, which seems so vast and open to him earlier. After a lot of hard work and being cheered on by his friend, Aizawa succeeds in defeating the villain, showing that he is capable in combat and not just as a secondary support fighter that he fought all along and how other people were insinuating. Oboro made him discover his fighting technique. He is applauded greatly for his success in taking down the monstrous villain, but insists it was Oboro's inspiring words that got him through the fight. But then he notices that something isn't right with Hizashi and Midnight. He notices the look on their face and immediately knows something bad has happened. Then Sensoji shows up, inspecting the speaker Aizawa had been hearing Oboro through, stating that it was completely busted and nothing could possibly be heard from it. This obviously confuses Aizawa, who then notices the bloody pile of rubble with his best friend wrapped up in a body bag. His best friend, Oboro, had died. Him and Hizashi stand by the crime scene, reminiscing about all the good times they had with him as they mourn his death. Whilst being drenched by the intense rainfall, which as Hizashi puts it, fits the mood that they're in, understandably the toll this takes on Aizawa is extreme. He spends the following school year working alone, training by himself in the school gym to work on his physical combat. Due to the intense amount of combat training he would do, he would often lose sleep, which is then where his infamous sleeping bag appears, as he would take it around school, catching up on sleep whenever he could. Despite this, his grades remained above average in all areas. However, he would begin to stop putting in full effort once he knew he had reached a passing grade. The teachers began to believe that Aizawa had become too complacent for his own good, which was further proven when the time for graduation came around. Aizawa sat with his homeroom teacher, discussing his future plans. He revealed his intentions to become an underground hero, accept money from other others to bring down other villains, kinda like a bounty hunter. Much to his teacher's disagreement though, suggesting that it would be wise not to rush into anything. Eventually the day came for his graduation, but Aizawa spent no time waiting around for any celebrations. He left the premise immediately, beginning his career as a pro hero Eraserhead, meeting many villains and allies alike on the way. Following on from this, Aizawa began his life as a pro hero, as years had passed since that dreadful day in his life, which resulted in his depression. Then an unforeseen event occurred that would shake him like nothing before. He once again reunited with Oboro under the most unexpected circumstances imaginable. After some time spent as a pro hero, he was called into an important meeting by the police force, who Aizawa now works with closely, about a rise in villainous outbreaks during chapter 65 of the Vigilante manga. This meeting consisted of most of the top heroes of the time. This is when it's revealed that Principal Nezu had personally requested for Midnight to start work at UA as a teacher. Baffled by the decision, right, Aizawa plays off any mention of him becoming a teacher. That being said though, Midnight still put a recommendation in for him anyway to the principal without Aizawa's permission. Sometime after this, however, he began teaching, where he quickly gained a rather poor reputation amongst students for being too strict and tough on them, again reminding me of Kakashi. He was going to the point where he straight up expelled an entire class before re-enrolling them again to prove a point to them all. Some students even referred to him as Derangerhead instead of Eraserhead, and this is when we transition into the Aizawa we all know and love today, the one that Deku met on his first day at UA. Now in the meantime, whilst Aizawa was getting by with his new life as a teacher, with depression, trying to move on with his life, and years passed on, Oboro, his friend, was turned into an experiment by none other than the League of Villains. Before his corpse could be cremated, All For One managed to steal it, handing it over to Dr. Garaki, who we know is responsible for all of the dark, nasty experiments behind the League. He is the guy who invented the dreaded Nomu, and that's how Kurogiri was born. Yes, you know, that's right, Kurogiri is a Nomu created from the body of Oboro. As we know, the Nomu are mindless super soldiers created by the Doctor by taking the corpses of the dead and performing experiments on them, including giving them multiple new quirks, making them more powerful artificial humans designed to serve nobody other than a select few from the League of Villains, as well as to be made so that it's impossible for them to leak any information to anyone who isn't part of the select few. By performing such experiments on Oboro and by mixing his cloud quirk with others, Dr. Garaki was able to breathe life into a one-of-a-kind Nomu creation. Kurogiri was a Nomu who possessed the intelligence of a high end, with a quirk known as Warp Gate, which is why Shigaraki didn't want to risk losing him, making Kurogiri an invaluable member of the team. All For One wanted him to be created just to serve Shigaraki so that he can succeed in his missions. Warp Gate allows the user to create a dark purple mist which allows anything or anyone to be instantly transported to another location. This unique quirk and level-headed personality with the loyalty that comes with it is what made him so important to All For One and Shigaraki, as he was the perfect protector. They can escape whenever they wanted to, but such a valuable asset of Shigaraki would eventually be taken away from him, as one day Kurogiri was arrested and sent to the Tartarus prison. It was here in chapter 254 that the three dumbigos of class 2A would meet once again. Aizawa and Hizashi began interrogating the captured Kurogiri, which is where they learnt the true fate of their former best friend. They both are obviously extremely traumatized by understanding what the hell happened to their friend, displaying intense signs of grief as they look at reality that their modified corpse of their amigo, even if they can't quite believe what just happened to him. Like, what the fuck? My friend's actually alive and he's just entirely different dude. Their job was to try and reawaken any attachments Oboro had for them in the past and try to bring that side of Kurogiri's personality back to life through the power of friendship. You got that right, guys. This is a fucking shonen. Friendship means everything. They needed to extract intel from him too, by the way. So then Shota remembers how Oboro would also take care of others, and Kurogiri wonders what he is talking about as Shota takes off his goggles and cries out to him with tears in his eyes, saying if he is still in there somewhere, then the three of them will become heroes together. This proved to be difficult as Kurogiri showed very little signs that he still held onto Oboro's personality, aside from the fact that he clearly cared deeply for others. In this case, it was Shigaraki, not them, only caring for Tomura Shigaraki's well-being, ignoring his own personality. Learning that Kurogiri still showed glimpses of his personality shocked both Hizashi and Aizawa, however, and it wasn't until chapter 255 that they began to detect unusual brainwave activity coming from Kurogiri, as Aizawa aggressively began asking Oboro specifically for answers and not Kurogiri. This caused his shadowy figure around him to change shape, beginning to resemble their best friend Oboro, as he then began to try and say Aizawa's name before being shut off completely, as Kurogiri's fog began going haywire before he could tell us who he really was and where the person responsible for him was hiding, which was the hospital, which explains to us how Dr. Garaki managed to get hands on Oboro's quirk. The trauma this put him through, as you can imagine, is almost unparalleled. To see your childhood best friend who you previously presumed was dead instead be illegally turned into a brutal scientific experiment is something nobody can ever begin to comprehend, and this made Aizawa seek payback for everybody the doctor had experimented with and tossed aside. This is what leads to Aizawa's motivation, and he helps in the war that ensues. Anyway guys, now you understand Aizawa's entire backstory. Thank you for joining me as always. Make sure to hit the notification bell for our channel, smash the like button to support us as always, and I'll see you guys next time.